Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second parallel session. The title of this parallel session is Quantitative Method of Resilience Assessment. We have 3 presentations. So we have like 20 minutes for each presentation. I would suggest like 50 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for discussion. Of course, if you finish earlier, we can discuss longer. I would ask everyone in the audience to, put their question into the chat. And yes. So to not lose more time, I would ask Rui to start with the presentation on integrated assessment of resilience of crop livestock system, an operational approach based on the, how to spell it, Malia platform. So the
Mail
floor
is.
is yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So, yes, good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roy Catarino, and I am a landscape agroeconomist, if we can say that, working now at INRA at Colmar in France. And today I will present you a conceptual framework to evaluate the resilience for sustainable crop livestock systems and, agriculture systems overall. So it is well known that the present modern agriculture stands as a main driver to surpass the planet boundaries. In addition to with socio-economic and ecological pressures that put in danger the actual sustainability of these current farming systems. So the solutions to these global challenges must be designed and implemented in according to local agroecological situations and to the local stakeholders such as farmers and decision makers. Therefore, the question is how to evaluate these agroecological systems and in particular, how to evaluate resilience especially when considering agriculture systems, that agriculture systems do not present the same issues, so they will require specific solutions to each one of them. Therefore, one possible solution is the use of integrated assessment and modeling to test complex present and future scenarios. And one of these IAM tools, it's Maelia, which is an agent-based platform developed by us in INRA, which is perfectly adapted to address this challenge that I mentioned, as Mael is capable of representing the dynamics and interactions between the ecological and the social economic components that form the whole agriculture system, which is then coupled with a decision-making model in order to absorb the real behavior of the involved stakeholders, namely the farmers. So the resulting simulations can be assessed through a wide range of already implemented socioeconomic indicators that can be viewed at a different space time resolutions. So from the field to the whole territory, and from a daily time step to the entire simulation period, which can span from a couple of years to a few decades, as it is in our case. In summary, Mael is composed by a set of robust, simple, and pattern-based models that represent the individual dynamics of the system components, as well as their interactions and singular biophysical states. The videos that you see below are taken from actual simulation in Maelia, and this is just to give you a brief overview of the platform. So on the left, we have a 3D representation of the interactions between the several layers. So the rain, temperature, soils, etc. And on the center, the different farms and the spatial position of each farmer, represented by a tractor here. And on the right, an example of 4 metrics that are recorded at a daily basis. So the case study. So within the framework of an European project called Diver Impact, we have evaluated a case study located in the Vendée region in the West France that wishes to develop a local crop livestock exchange market between five arable and two livestock farmers in order, and this was done in order to increase the local protein autonomy, and that is to say, to substitute the usually imported soya supplements with peas and fava beans that are that want to be produced locally, as well as to increase the resilience against external markets and climate variability. And this is based on the strong collaborative and pre-established decision making between farmers regarding the new crop sequences to be chosen. And to this new situation, new modality, we call it the synergetic scenario, where strong synergy is posed between the two group of farmers, or between within the whole all the farmers. And so the baseline situation and this synergetic modality were evaluated according to the two most extreme climate scenarios proposed by the IPCC. So the RCP 2.6 and RCP 8.5. This one represents what is called the business as usual situation, whereas the RCP 2.6 involves strong climate measures that are put in place. And we evaluated as well according to two socioeconomic scenarios, namely the SSP1 and SSP3, with increasing degrees of price instability and stochasticity. And this was evaluated for the period between 2005 and 2050. So although the synergetic modality reached a total protein sufficiency for the farms involved, as we have shown in a recent paper, the question that we posed is if this complementarity between farmers makes the system more resilient, or which are the trade-offs for passing from to a crop livestock integrated system. So in summary, we would like to know what renders resilience to this integrated system. We therefore evaluated resilience according to three dimensions: economic, environmental, and social. Each of which was evaluated with one or more desired functions to preserve, a total of six. For example, food provision and economic viability for the economic dimension, ecosystem services to production, to society, and the overall integrity of the environment, and the social acceptability. And each of these functions are characterized by a set of 12 performance attributes. Namely, we have here yield for food provision, gross margins, and economic dependency for economic variability, nitrogen supplied by the ecosystem services, carbon sequestration, pesticide active ingredient, greenhouse gases, and workload. So finally, each of these performance attributes were assessed by four criteria of dynamics that were extracted from a recent work published by Dardonville and colleagues. And we have selected the level or the mean of the performance attribute over the study period here, the trend, or this is the overall tendency of the performance indicator, measured as a linear regression, the variability according to the relative standard deviation over time, and the resistance, which is the number of disruptions measured by the frequency that performance indicator surpasses by 20% above or below a moving average. So now passing to the results section. This spider plot shows the level of the 12 performance attributes within scenario um, 2.6 for both the baseline in brighter green and for the synergetic situation in darker green. Just to say that in this plot, the preferable performance value, it's on the edge of the plot. So, for example, for pesticide active ingredients, the smallest value it's outside 3.4, whereas the largest value 3.5 is inside the plot, because that is actually what is preferable, which is a smaller value for pesticide application. So the actual results, I hope I have explained this well. Um, so due to the introduction of legumes, we actually obtain a mixed results in terms of yield, but a significant improve uh, uh, in the economic function, in the economic viability. However, the synergetic modality, the integrated system, does not improve the average performance of the indicators related to the ecosystem services, neither in production or to production, nor to society, and it actually decreases the environmental integrity, to say, of the system. So, for example, um, we have in the baseline scenario a minus 147 for greenhouse gases, which means that greenhouse gases that carbon is actually synced, it's actually stored more carbon equivalent that is emitted, and the value is much larger for the baseline scenario than for the synergetic scenario. But uh, on the other hand, it reduces the average workload of the farmer. So what we see here in the first instance, it's a major trade-off between the social economic dimensions and the environmental dimension. Now, quickly to compare the RCP 2.6 with RCP 8.5, with the exception of greenhouse gases, where now the synergetic performs better than the baseline modality, and a result that we did not expect, which is that the overall modeled yield tends to be better in this extreme climate scenario, which results in higher gross margins, as we see it here. But, well, this needs to further research, but it may be related with the Atlantic climate in the region, which can be favorable to some of the crops included in the rotations. So, and finally, this table shows the difference between the two modalities for the four evaluated criteria of dynamics. Here, the plus indicates an improvement and the minus the opposite situation. It does not mean that the actual value is the desired or not, just the variation. There is a lot to say in this table, but I would just like to stress that here we notice as well a trade-off between the overall level, so in this line, and the variability in this line. That is to say that positive levels variation that are positive are usually followed by higher variability, and the opposite is also true. So to conclude and to answer the first question, how to evaluate resilience in agroecological systems, we can say that Maelia can evaluate the dynamics and the levels of multiple performance and resilience metrics, and it can be applied universally. That is to say, if there is data, we can use Maelia at multiple spatial and temporal scale. Therefore, I hope I have shown that Maelia is a valuable tool to take into account to future evaluations of resilience in um, systems. Now, regarding the case study, we can conclude that there is a major trade-off between level and stability in most of the performance attributes, as well as a trade-off between the environmental and the economic dimensions. And something to be checked later, the possibility of a positive or a lower effect of climate change on oceanic climates. And as a perspective, uh, what we would like to now is to expand this case study with more farms and a higher level of crop diversification, as well as to evaluate new crops in the rotations. So we will be able to determine the, the actual critical value factors that influence resilience on agroecological systems. So thank you for your attention, and thanks a lot to the whole Maelia team that is shown in these slides. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rui. I'm happy to announce that this session raised a lot of interest. So we have currently 87 people listening to this session. So, and we already got one question from Patrick Reinsma. Environmental impacts focus on impacts in the region. When imports are reduced, wouldn't this affect environmental impacts elsewhere?
Yes, probably, but here with this case study, we are just evaluating the region or this system per se, and not the impacts elsewhere. But yes, I think you're completely right, and this is a point to to take into consideration when yeah when with in the concluding remarks for sure.
So if you would sum up your results on the effect on resilience in one main sentence, what would be the key home take message of your presentation?
I would say that the key message now is this so these trade-offs between the dimensions, increasing the economic performance of the system reduces simultaneously the of this system, this particular integrated system, reduces simultaneously the environmental impacts. But furthermore, the difference of the trade-offs once again between levels and variability. Higher the level, higher the variability as well.
Okay, thank you. I think there are no questions so far. Then with the time, I think we should move forward. And I'm
Thanks a
happy
lot.
to, thank you again, Rui. And so I would welcome Murilo, and he will present on the potential synergies and trade-offs between efficiency and resilience in European farms. So Murilo, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you all see my screen? Oh, I will continue if no one intervene. So my name is Murilo. I'm a new PhD student from Wagner University. Miranda, I work together with Miranda and Frederick, which are both my supervisors. And today we'll be presenting the first steps of my PhD research, and that's why we added this word potential, because unfortunately we can't show you the results because we're still getting the data, but I think it hopefully will be interesting to discuss the methods and the ideas that we want to share with you for our research. So we want to assess the synergies and the trade-offs between efficiency and resilience in in European farmers, and we are part of the Mixed project, which is a project that involves many other institutes and researchers around Europe. So this is to start with the current challenges and future trends. We have the FAO document, which is very well known, which presents these future challenges for agriculture in the world. And so we have these perspectives of increasing population in the world, and also the necessity for increasing food production and feed production. But at the same time, we have the also well-known threats of climate changes, and together with the trends from the past, which shows that they were increasing this trend of increasing challenges from the biological pests and diseases, and also the increasing climate related challenges, right? So we live in a world that potentially in the future we're going to have to produce more food and also more efficiently, and at the same time create this agriculture systems that can cope with these different challenges. So that we believe that there's this urgency to simultaneously think of on both sides, so increasing efficiency and resilience. And to give a European perspective, here in Europe, we have the Common Agricultural Policy and the European Green Deal, with the CAP objectives. There is interaction with this challenge of increasing efficiency and resilience. In our conceptual framework, so as I previously mentioned, efficiency will deals with the best possible ways of producing the outputs from a given mix of inputs, and resilience gives us this long-term perspective of whether a system can maintain its functions while coping with stresses and challenges. So within resilience principles, we have the diversity, modularity, openness, feedbacks, and reserves. And when we apply it at the farm level, then farmers often look at different resilience strategies like crop diversity, crop rotation, irrigation, and they don't necessarily need to lead to resilience, but they interact with resilience, such as subsidies and education. And this is also at the same time interaction with the farm efficiency. So for assessments, we want to use the FADN, which will give us the farm inputs and outputs and some social characteristics of the farm, and integrated with the weather data from the European Climate Assessment Dataset project, and add the level of the greenhouse gases data from National Statistics Institutes complementing the FADN. Well, very superficially, efficiency is a ratio between an observed output and the maximal feasible output. And for calculating efficiency, we want to use the data development analysis, which is helpful when you're dealing with different agricultural outputs, because we don't need to make previous assumptions of the functional form of the production function. And for efficiency, we want to calculate the economic efficiency and also the economic efficiency, but including the environmental factor of greenhouse gases emissions. And for resilience, we split it into two. One, an indicator that measures the performance from previous shocks that will be identified and measured, and this performance indicator measure the deviations from expected performance and that exceed a threshold. Very similar to the presentation that or similar to the presentation that you previously saw from Rui. a similar idea, but we want to include the production function and the past efficiency for calculating the expected performance of a farm, and also including the time dimension, so shocks, frequency, and recovery time. And we believe that this resilience performance indicator will partially validate a general resilience indicator that then captures more general system characteristics that enhance resilience. And then to assess where there will be synergies or trade-offs of efficiency, we want to apply a multivariate multiple regression with the resilience and efficiency scores. And these contextual factors will then give us insight of the synergies and trade-offs, as well as the functional form that relates efficiency and resilience. And the potential explanatory variables that we could test, these are just examples, right? So subsidies, invested capital, crop rotation, the presence of conservation areas in the zone, so use of irrigation, not using irrigation, crop diversity, education level. Well, there are many examples in the literature that often are people doing second stage assessments to see what contextual factors influence either resilience or efficiency. So just to give some expected outcomes, first we would like to answer what's the functional relationship. So how is this trade-off? How are the upper bounds, or where the farms are at, and can we draw a clear functional relationship between efficiency and resiliency, and then getting these contextual factors, so which ones of them are related to synergies and which ones we observe trade-offs, and then also assess if these functional relationship and also the synergies and trade-offs, do they change when the environmental efficiency or is taken into account? So if this relationship changes when we change the efficiency measure. And also we believe that with our assessment we will be we can look if the farms have been improving their economic and environmental efficiencies, and we hopefully, if our sample allows, we can observe the effect of consecutive shocks on farms, and how these relate to some resiliency strategies. So, for example, do they change to more inputs based strategies to adapt to transformability and things like this. And our project wants to focus on the perspective of assessing also the effects of agrobiodiversity. So studying the mixed systems and specialized systems. So we expect that the mixed systems could be more resilient than specialized systems. But when then the environmental efficiency is considered, then the mixed system could be more efficient than specialized. But this is just educated guess, let's say, like this, based on the literature. And yeah, so after concluding the assessments, we'll be able to answer this. But this, as I said, these are just the first steps of my research, and so these are just hypotheses. And to give you some outlook of the additional scope of the PhD project, so we don't want to just assess at the farm level. We also would like to include other scales. So landscape, regional, and country level, and also assess if there are potential reallocations that could simultaneously improve efficiency and resilience. So exchange of farm inputs, or integrating outputs as inputs for other farms, so things like this. And also one part of my research, we had the farms perceptions, especially linked with the reallocation models, so the results from the reallocation models, and to check if these results we got from reallocation models matches with farmers' perceptions, if their willingness and they what they are already doing at the field, if there is a match between the the potential and what is actually they're doing in the fields. And also add the we would we also would like to add the spatial perspective, so check some spatial spillovers and how these contextual factors relate to spatial features. And lastly, with the greenhouse gases studies, we could potentially simulate a carbon offset market, and where also the reallocations would play a role, so to increase the efficiency and resilience of farms. That's it, and I think I was very brief, but thank you very much for your attention, and feel free to make questions, comments, and suggestions. This is just a research at its early stages. I would really appreciate for your, if you could give some input to my research, and for further contact and details, these are the contacts that you could reach me. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. And we already got questions, so you will get your feedback. So question number 1 is from Miranda. Hi, Murilo. Could you give an example of an expected synergy between farm level efficiency and resilience?
For example, I think irrigation, it's a crop management that it could directly increase the farm efficiency, for example, and resilience, as previous presentations today show that when we use irrigation, for example, we have less impact of climate change challenge, for example.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Erwin Waters. Wouldn't you expect outcomes of mixed versus specialized depend on which environmental efficiency? Greenhouse gas emissions behave very differently compared to more local emissions like nitrate pesticides.
Yes, it could be. These other layers of environmental impacts could also be added to the assessment, and I'm considering to include it, but there's a problem with data and how detail level we could reach for including all these environmental layers of environmental efficiency. I'm not sure if I answered correctly the question. But
maybe we can wait if there's another question from the audience. I think we are always a bit lagging behind, that's why. Let's see if there's something else coming in. So in between I can ask, so what would be your main take-home message, quite briefly, like just one key point?
Well, I hopefully
it's still in the start, I know, but
yeah, it's still in the start, but hopefully I think I believe that I hope that we can raise this awareness to including efficiency and resilience together in assessment, and not just what is often included, for example, yields or just net returns. So giving hopefully there will be a meaningful additional perspective when we give this relationship between efficiency and resilience.
Okay, there's one last question from the audience. Could you maybe elaborate on how you'd expect mixed farming to affect efficiency and resilience versus specialized? This is from Guilo.
Well, mixed farming, the one more obvious in characteristics of it is that it adds biodiversity, so crop diversity to the system. So in one point in resilience, I think is more clear to see, so that the systems could have more different multiple responses from different challenges. So adding a mixed system could be more resilient in this way, and where for efficiency uh, is is not so not it's not a very straight answer, because you could have very mixed results for different types of mixed farming.
So one last question. It is about the farming perception. Resilience is often a strategy that pays off more in the long term. Do you have ideas on how to get farmers to get a more long-term view to enhance their resilience? So please be really short in answering this question, because
Okay.
otherwise we have a time problem.
I think one of the answers from the long-term perspective, we actually come from the short-term answers that farmers will have as we have more shocks and challenges coming. As they become more adaptable to this higher frequency of shocks, they will also at the same time will become more resilience in the long term. That's just a hope. I don't know if that will actually happen.
Okay, yes, thank you for your presentation and for answering these questions. So I would now propose to move forward to Kasia and her presentation on resilience revealed through total factor productivity decomposition in times of crisis, a comparative analysis of the Polish farming sectors. So welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see my presentation now. So I have a pleasure to present the research which was together with my colleagues from Warsaw University of Life Sciences. I think it's very much related to previous presentation. So first I would explain a bit how the inspiration came from observation of the global trends of agricultural outputs mainly, and how it's related to inputs, and the literature linking productivity with resilience, which is, I think, relatively new. And then present a bit of methodology which independently so far was developed for total factor productivity changes, and separate literature for resilience, various types of resilience. But the contribution of this paper was an attempt to link the two, to propose a framework which would link measurement of resilience with measurement of productivity and how they relate to each other. And the validation comes from Polish sectors in reaction to two economic crises: the global crisis we all know from 2008, and Russian embargo, which also hit globally the farms. So, oops, it's not going forward, is it? Okay. So the observation of global agricultural outputs shows that at the beginning, the the growth of output was possible only because of intensification of inputs like land labor. But later the input started decreasing while output was still growing. So how? And so the answer is that total factor productivity is a detector which explains the story, and also is a detector of farm survival, because no farm sector can survive with falling.
Kasia, sorry to interrupt you, but you stopped your presentation, so we cannot see it anymore.
Which is a pity. Okay, let's try again. I thought it was possible. Let's start. How about now? Can you see?
Looks good. Yeah, thank you.
Right. Okay, so the inspiration comes from observation of this trend, that output was growing with inputs going down, this yellow line. So it is even more visible for Poland, because in communism you can see that that inputs were so high and output was driven only through the inputs, but the total factor productivity was falling. It was unsustainable situation. It was centrally planned economy, no economic reasoning and profitability. In transition, you can see that there were disturbances, no clear trends. But then, after joining EU, Poland started behaving like other developed countries, so that total factor productivity was growing while the inputs were falling down and output was going up. So the agricultural output was possible with savings in inputs. And that was observed by Comes et al. That indeed identifying sources of this TFP growth and its potential for resource saving is a key link with sustainability and resilience, so that we can produce more with using less, how it's possible. So there is a literature showing of insights of total factor productivity. The total factor productivity change is composed of technological change and efficiency change. And the relation between the two, which one is driving total factor productivity, is part of the story. And efficiency change is can be even more precisely decomposed into technical efficiency change, which is changes in farming practices, scale efficiency change, which is changes due to exploiting economies of scales, and residual mix, which is the rest. So having this insight, we can go even deeper into what drives technological change itself. And here comes also literature which shows that it's not only innovations, but also ecosystem services. So we can see that this combination of economics and of resilience links, but they are not clear yet. And then comes also the paper by Comes et al., who shows this heuristic approach, which in general shows that changes in total factor productivity are somehow driven by innovations and ecosystem services, and somehow are related to sustainability and resilience. So the question was how to measure it in practice, so that the link becomes clear and measurable. So TFP growth can be measured by changes in this total factor productivity decomposed into technological part and efficiency part. And then we can link it with our knowledge on resilience, defined as ability to ensure the provision of the system functions in reaction to shocks. And this comes from Shore Farm project, this idea of three capacities: robustness, adaptability, and transformability, which can give insight for before crisis and after crisis resilience. So this comes this framework which tries to formally link the resilience with total factor productivity. You can see parts of this previous heuristic approach. So the total factor productivity we know is the changes in total factor productivity are composed into technological changes. We were measuring these sources from gene revolution and health input delivery, hardware, software, or ecosystem services, biological pest control, pollinator management, and so on. And we see the efficiency change part, which comes from input use, efficiency of input use, and of exploiting scale, and of managerial practices. And how it is linked. So the idea is that capacities show in this approach the potential resilience, in a sense that you have some capacities, but whether you survive or not, you can check if the shock appears. And for this revealed resilience, this total factor productivity change is a detector whether how you manage to survive the shock. In reality, of course, you can still measure your robustness, adaptability, and transformability, but this is like total factor productivity says whether you survived or not. And due to its decomposition, we can also have insight what was the strategy of the farms. So we say that agricultural system was robust if the decomposition of this total factor productivity didn't show substantial changes. So they did the business as usual, we can say, yes. So the product, so the technological change and efficiency change didn't change much in the proportion. Their strategy was to keep on going with these components without much changes. And the system is adaptable if the composition of this total factor productivity changes substantially change. So for example, if the technology was driving this sector before, now efficiency is driving this sector. And that's why this total factor productivity is growing. And the third point is that in the case that the total factor productivity declines, which is not sustainable in the long run for any system, any sector, then we look into what were the strategies. This right hand lower table shows this. So if total factor productivity is growing or staying the same and there was no composition change in TFP, we say it's robust. If it was growing or staying the same with change of composition, it means it was adaptable. If total factor productivity was declining and no composition was changed, so we say it didn't manage to be robust by just keeping the same way of doing. So it needs to adapt to survive, at least needs to adapt. And if the total factor productivity is declining and composition was changed, so despite of these changes in technology and efficiency, it's still declining, it means that it needs something more, it needs transformation because adaptation didn't work. So I will not go into details of the formal methodology, but of course it all exists. It's a Fair-Primont index decomposition into technological change, efficiency change. This is first equation, and second equation shows that this efficiency changes can be decomposed even into more details, into technical changes, scale efficiency changes, and residual mix efficiency changes. And data came from FADN for Poland for 2006-15. This is about 12,000 observations a year. And the variables taken for calculations of total factor productivity was total output. For outputs, and for inputs it was utilized agricultural area, it was labor inputs measured by annual working units, total intermediate consumption, and capital. You can see the codes from FADN in the brackets for more detailed measurement if somebody wants to follow this approach. And second source of data was survey on 600 farms, so the same FADN sample, but subsample of 600 farms with questions on their sources of innovations in this decomposition that COMES proposed, so that we look at gene revolution, we look at enhanced input delivery, hardware, software use, post-harvest management, and ecosystem services. So we knew about about all types of farms, what kind of innovations and ecosystem services they were using. So we knew what was driving, what were the differences between drivers of technological change among the types of agricultural production. So this is how we looked at total factor productivity and its components. So what is when the technology change is driving the productivity and when it's efficiency change which is driving. And when we talk about this change in components, so which would show the adaptation, adaptability, possibility, it's, for example, like in this circles that we see that for some years the technology was driving the total factor productivity, and then after the crisis of 2008 we see that in 2009 and 10 certain sectors definitely changed their adjusted their behavior. So in field crop it's not anymore the technological change is driving the total factor productivity, but it's efficiency change, for example. In cattle farming, we can see that also technological change was a main factor driving total factor productivity, while after the crisis in 2010, we can see that suddenly those two components have the same magnitude in driving total factor productivity. And for example, for other types of farms, we also see that at first the efficiency and technological change were equally driving total factor productivity, and then the strategy changed and the efficiency change was the driving factor. Then, as I said, efficiency changes can be decomposed even into more details. I don't want to spend time too much, but just to show you that after each crisis, the composition was examined, and we can also see how it is changing. So, if, for example, technical efficiency took over in 2010 for the field crop farms, while before it was a minor, it was less important factor in efficiency growth. And you can see in the bars that this when the decomposition is really changed and in which years. So this each year was analyzed for this decomposition changes and assessment whether they changed or not, and how the total factor productivity changed. So all in all, after this close examining, of course, we were most interested in reaction after 2008 because it was this global financial crisis, and after 2014 because it was this Russian embargo, two very strong economic shocks. And you can see the summary in the table. So in the green, so in the gray parts, you can see when we assess that the sectors was robust because maintained total factor productivity increase without major changes in the composition of total factor productivity. And in a yellow boxes, we can see when the total factor productivity increase was possible due to changes in its compositions. So they showed this adaptability, which helped them keep on going with total factor productivity. In the green boxes, we can see the situations when the sectors failed in maintaining their total factor productivity increase. So we see whether they try to change the composition in this time or not. And if they didn't change the composition in this time, so we say they didn't adapt on time, so they actually failed to be robust because they keep on the same composition while total factor productivity was declining. So yeah,
just want to ask you to come to the concluding remarks.
this is the last slide.
Perfect.
So the farming sectors differ in reactions to shocks among the farm types and among the types of crisis. In the reaction to the first global crisis was that in the first years of financial crisis, only field crop and granivore sectors stayed resilient according to this classification, while remaining sectors actually failed to do so and need to adapt. They didn't adapt and didn't regain their total factor productivity, which is unsustainable for a longer time. Indeed, in the third year of the crisis, all the sectors achieved their robustness or adaptability, which was assessed based on whether they adjusted their technological change, efficiency changes or not. And in reaction to Russian embargo, all sectors remained robust, even those that were most affected, like horticulture. And our case in Schur Farm was horticulture, so it is interesting to see which capacities and how they were built and which helped the sectors to remain robust, but there is no, it's not covered in this paper. So interestingly, no case was that TFP was declining despite of changes in composition. So there is no situation of transformation needed. So in very long story short, thank you. I will maybe leave highlights, but I don't have to comment them. It's just
no, I think that's a good point to just maybe pick one of the main highlights. So if you just have to choose from these 5, so what would you see as the main highlight?
Maybe not from the highlight, but maybe the main message is that revealed that the potential resilience, which we measure by capacities, this is not really able to tell how the system gonna survive because it still have to be assessed through revealed resilience. Yes, so the resilience measured after shock, and it's not enough to measure again capacities, but we need a detector like total factor productivity, whether the patient died or not after the shock. So because he can die healthy, yes, in a sense. But the shock reveals whether the resilience was enough to survive or not. And for that, we link these capacities with the total factor productivity, which is detector of survival in a sense for any business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we are just 1 minute above the time. So yeah, thanks again to all the presenters and to the audience for your interest. And yeah, see you soon in the plenary session.